Today I'm going to focus more on Urban Festival UIT, but I organized Stencibility. It's our 8th year. We're a street art festival, and 2 years ago we went to Łódź, and it was such an awful experience for us in a way that we decided to start organizing mural-free festivals. We have some exceptions, of course, but this is our goal because we see it as a big problem right now. But I will proceed with my real presentation. So I will talk to you about the relationship between the people who live in our cities and our cities themselves. So environment and the people. And I grew an interest in it when I started my master's degree, and by the time I started writing my thesis, I had been organizing Urban Festival UIT for already 4 years. And I really grew an interest into what's the point of what I'm doing. I'm doing these urban festivals in Estonia. You see loads of urban festivals, loads of music festivals who use public space for their concerts, film venues. They all slowly start calling themselves urban festivals because it sounds cool. And then I wanted to find out what's the impact then. Is there a point of continuing this process or not? And I'm not a normal curator. I just have to call myself something, might as well be a curator. I think more like an artist. I have an interdisciplinary background. I've studied music. I played piano for 8 years, and then I went to drama school. And then I understood that I really enjoy co-working with artists. And then at some point I found out that I really enjoy creating those special moments in our cities. And I didn't know how to call them, but when I started researching material for my thesis, I found out that there already is a term for that, and those places are called time places. And the term comes from Finland, really. It's from Panu Lehtovuori, who also at some point, actually I think he almost founded the Urban Studies department in the Academy of Arts. But I will tell you now what is a time place. Well, you can look at the photo here. It's made of one of my own events. And time place. Time place is a moment when a meaning of place is changed, which means that it can be a very temporary moment, but since this, and of course already in a place you know, it can be a new place, but it can be a place where you have been to many times. But this moment of time changes how you think about this particular place. And for example, I used different events for doing that. And the idea is that this change is so strong and it's so different from your reality or how you perceive public space in general and every day, that the impact is very, very long. So the magical thing is that even though the festival I organize is, of course, all the events are temporary, but it doesn't matter. The impact has been done because it's so much more different than the everyday. Now you can relax, I can read it to you. Since for my thesis, I gathered information by conducting focus group interviews, which means that you have a very big group of people and you guide the topics, but basically you can really study how people think about certain topics. And for example, this it's subjective because it comes from one of our volunteers, but it actually shows quite well what is the difference between a site-specific festival, which is UIT, or just a festival which calls itself urban because it takes place in a city. So he says, the thing with the other festivals is that the city becomes a concert venue, or there are different places for the events. For example, places that are transformed into cinema venues. When it comes to it, then the city isn't divided into places, but into potential. This makes you look around and sincerely think, oh, an abandoned building, maybe something could be done here. So it changes the perspective of places nothing has happened yet. For me, this is super important because I don't want to show what you can do with this particular place, but I would really like the people to implement this technique then, yeah? So, now the most important part, how to communicate with the people, how to find the right tool. It makes me sad that in those events, like this particular event, for example, these are mainly for specialists in this field, which means it's quite exclusive and not very open to, let's say, normal, everyday inhabitants. That's why I use as a tool a festival, because a festival is very fun. You don't even notice that you gain some knowledge about how to use public space, for example. You attend a performance or a party, or in our program we have loads of alternative city tours. We have events for children. They're very gameful. They invite you to play. And actually, a person usually doesn't even know, it's not hard work, you don't have to focus. Here, for me, for example, it's quite difficult to sit down and focus, and I don't think that I'm the only one. So, this is one example of how to engage a community. This was a big apartment block building, and we had to create some kind of a commercial video for our festival the first year, and we were really struggling how to do it really cheap and at the same time that would be interesting for everyone. So we decided to make this artwork, and what that really meant is that we had to go like behind every door of the building and talk to everyone so that they would understand what they have to do, because some of them had to turn off the light on the right moment. So we talked to every one of them. That was nice. We got invited in. Old ladies were apologizing because they didn't have their teeth in their mouth. And when the event started, it was really, really nice because most of the people started gathering in front of the house because they had already turned the lights off. So they had like spare time to just wait for the others to turn the light on to have this image. And I had the Rupert, what's that called? This thing? I had the loudspeaker because some of the people forgot to do it on the right moment, and I had to remind them, like shout, like, hey, but I didn't know the apartment number, so there was this one local woman from the building who was like telling me like, this is 36, and I was like, dear 36, please turn off your lights. And it was, for me, of course, very fun, but for the house it was super important because they had a reason to come together. And it's not a small thing. In Estonia, usually you get together with the people of your house when you have to discuss some kind of a problem. Like, why aren't our lights working properly, or what to do with the garbage. Usually people are quarreling. It's not a very nice experience. But this really gave a reason to get together. This is, as a tool, a city tour. Loads of information. People usually associate city tours with touristic attractions. It doesn't have to be so. We usually try to make them as subjective as possible. We really take locals, ask them do they have any special interests. For example, we made a tour in the panel block district, and one guy talked about the subcultures of clubs in 1990s in that region. And people get a new level of information. That's really important, because if you use city spaces on every day, it becomes very routine and you're not open to the stimuli and so on. So you really need like an extra trigger, someone to tell you, give you information, and you can take it in. So creating a dialogue is the most important thing for me. Art is nice and culture is amazing, but actually my main idea is that I would really like to create a dialogue between people who live in cities. Not specialists, but normal people. And usually you don't have a reason to go to someone and ask, how are you doing? Like, how do you feel? Do you like the city where you, not the city, but how's your neighborhood? It's such a weird way how to start small talking. But I got a very good reason for doing that since I was doing the interviews for my thesis. And this is one of my favorite definitions of a city. A city is a human settlement in which strangers are likely to meet. This photo was made after one party we had on the beach. People started to communicate with each other. They met. There was this magical moment. This is another type of a dialogue. We used one abandoned not building, given it was like an hangar. And it was occupied by homeless people, which meant that I had to ask them, can I use your home? Of course, I had to ask. And it was a very nice moment because they were super surprised, but like surprised in a good way. And they invited us into their home and we invited them to watch the movie, which we wanted to screen there. And I saw them later. I was very eager to see are they coming, and they came with their own beers and had a nice time. And this is the reason, this is actually the part I enjoyed about my thesis the most, and it's an abstract about how people talk then about their cities. For example, one woman, aged 38, says, you can relax, you don't have to look at it. It is really common in Estonia to think of the city in contrast to the countryside. I strongly feel that. Tartu is small, but the anonymity, haste and loneliness of bigger cities really wrecks me. I can't go to big cities that are crowded. It's probably my own quirk. I don't like people being very close to me. The city weighs on me in a sense. Certainly not Tartu, because it is my hometown and I was born here, but, and the other one goes on, I guess the phenomenon of big cities is that people are really close, yet far away too, and then the lead is taken again. It's really nice how people communicate with each other. And then she said, yes, but I perceive it really sharply. And when I go traveling, I always choose to visit the countryside, not the city. Super interesting for me. I feel really sharply that the city is not the natural environment, and it is more than an artificial environment. And this artificiality disturbs me somehow. It's not okay with me. And then the other one continues. It's so interesting because they keep changing. Like one tries to say how bad it is for her to live in cities. The other one keeps like interrupting and saying how amazing it is. And she continues, it is so exciting in big cities to find the one place that is the most crowded. I don't like crowded places as well, but I like to do this experiment that I start analyzing my own thoughts as these people have cornered me, and it's really disgusting. Quite a strong word. It makes me laugh, interesting, because it's funny. And the other asks, but the city is not disgusting, is it? No, it's just the situation. Everyone's really busy and I'm stuck there in the middle of them all thinking that, and she's thinking her strange thoughts there. So we all have different rituals in cities. It's so exciting for me that we all have our little, some informants said that they enjoy watching into other people's windows, and some confess that they still keep trying those unexplored places in the city, or they keep fantasizing where they would like to live. And I use my festival to actually explore those thoughts, because I really want to talk about those things, because I think it's very important in order to create personal relationships with the city. So the people are not observers, but they really feel one part of the environment, which means that if you feel that you are a part of the environment, then you can actually act on it. Otherwise, you just observe and you whine. So it's about creating a connection between humans who live in cities and humans and buildings. And these connections can be very well done if you put people into very unexpected locations. I think it's a great tool because then they have to understand together what to do there. For example, this is a site-specific installation on the street, which is called Moon Street in Tartu. And the way I like to work with my artists is that I have artists who I like, and then I ask them to cycle around the city, come to Tartu, of course, if they're not from there, and find a place that inspires them. So for me, it is vital that an artist doesn't come to me with a prepared artwork and we will find a location for it, but he will really come, observe, analyze, and create an artwork which fits in the environment. Do I still have time? Okay. This was one of the most memorable events which were reminded me by my informants. This was actually a cubicle, like a lamp, in the middle of a very dark beach. And they remembered it a year later very vividly, because for them it was a complete surprise. They didn't really understand where were they, because it was very dark. They were used to the beach because they went swimming there sometimes, usually not in the dark, and they came there. And this surprise was so big for them that they still get very excited when they talk about it. So this is the power of time, place, I think. And why festivals and installations, site-specific installations in particular, are important is that they give you a reason. When I wrote my master's thesis, then I studied how we perceive cities. And usually we have 3 levels, but 2 of them are the most important. One of them is called operational perception, which means that we perceive cities which are important for us during that moment. We perceive different spots in cities. For example, we want to go to work, and then we only notice the things which are related to this way from home to work. And then we have the other type of perception, which is much more interesting for me, and it's called inferential perception, which deals with the memories and emotions. And they all, like those types of perception, they create our urban model, which is very, very subjective. And in order to put extra elements on the model, we have to give each other a reason, because usually if your friend doesn't live in the area, then you don't have a reason to go there. So if you put an artwork in this area, then you have a reason. For example, this is called Chinatown in Tartu. It consists of only dachas mainly. And people who doesn't own a dacha, they usually don't go there. But we really wanted the locals and other people from the city to come together. So we created this kind of, not we, our artist, K.Lind, created an alternative dacha in a way. It's a sculpture. You could look into it. There was this little alternative world. And it, just to remind you, it's not so that we will go there and then put this big installation in their region. It's not like that. We go there, we do some field work, we communicate with locals, they get used to us, we bring the artist in. We like the process of the dialogue, and we also got some gifts from the locals, which meant that it was a good idea. The locals got a gift from us. Some locals actually stole one part of the installation. It was a 200-kilogram dog. So one of them has this sculpture in their homes. Then places like this, for example, it's a church no one really remembers anymore. We created an installation there by the artists of Tundra from St. Petersburg. There were over 1,000 people coming in, and the church not workers, but how do you call it, the people who are in the church, they were really happy because they were eager to get some extra attention, because they really need some extra funding, because as you see, this church doesn't have a tower. It was bombed. Yeah, okay. random place in the forest. We did an installation there. It's quite dark, although. So it comes to offering an alternative perspective, which is very important because, for example, Tartu is very small. It's 100,000 people. People are quite bored. So we need to find different ways to make ourselves inspired. For example, Black Cubicle, which offered you the opportunity to go inside the cubicle, and then it distracted how you saw and listened to the noises outside. So it really distorted the reality. I can stop here. I can continue whenever. This was a booth with contact microphones, so you can hear different perspectives of the city, little details. We invite people to play, for example, installation which just surprises you in the city, invite you to play with it. No, there's no name of the installation, it's just there. This is actually a machine for creating an earthquake. You can push the button and then the earth starts to tremble. There was the washing machine motor inside the ground. I have so much more to tell, sorry, but it's okay. I can maybe conclude. It's actually a case study, it's very interesting and quite a long story. But this is how one completely abandoned place turned into a community garden because we did a very temporary event there. This was the place. We cleaned up a bit, made a party using the bottles of confiscated vodka bottles, which were here, did some. And now it's a community garden. And actually, this community garden is destroyed now, and it's a parking lot again. Great win. So it all comes down to passive and active impact. Because we can, this is really the last slide. So, because we can talk about all those beautiful expectations and how people will maybe change how they act in cities, but there are like two ways, and I hope one will lead to the other. One is, of course, that the impact is turned on during the event, but the other way is really that people implement the tools we give them, for example, exploring, curiosity towards your environment, and they start using it on an everyday basis. This is what I'm counting on. Thank you.